Tim Duncan leaving the NBA, Becky Hammond said, "It's the little things I'm going to miss, like him grabbing the back of guys' heads as they come off the court, something he did all the time." Greg Popovich is mourning his basketball soulmate, and at the same time, I think he's mourning Hack A Shaq because it's a strategy he has employed time after time, year after year, even for the sake of fun. It's been a rule change that just came up this summer. Basically, Adam Silver changed the rule, changing it so that the last 2 minutes of every quarter now and overtime will have the flagrant foul, one shot in possession, and any attempt to jump on a guy's back, something like that, is also going to result in a flagrant foul. Phil, what do you think about the change?
I think it's good for the NBA casual fan who's watching. I think there'll be less awkward stoppages. I don't know if it's necessarily good for basketball. I still think it's important that players understand how to hit free throws and shoot. I think it's an integral part of the basketball learning process. And it was kind of funny because as soon as you mentioned jump on people's backs, I was also thinking, man, LeBron James is going to love this rule too, because that's essentially how people foul him, right? They just gang football tackle him. I think it actually makes contracts of guys like DeAndre Jordan and Andre Drummond way more valuable, just because if you can't like that was the major thing against them, right? You couldn't play them in the fourth because they would just hack them and they may lose the game for you. And that was my big worry with all these free agents coming in. It's like, are you really going to pay, Andre Drummond as your main guy when you can't play him in the fourth quarter? And that stuff matters. Mm-hmm. But now they're trying to make it so you can play him. And look, I've never been the biggest fan of free throws in general. Like, I don't have a perfect idea, but I would love them to be eliminated on some level. I think it's very separate from the game. What? Yeah, I'm not a fan of free throws. I think it's really it's weird that you stop playing basketball, everyone watches while one person does a very predictable set action. Like, it just, to me, it seems silly. But I'll come back to your point and just say that I think the NBA will benefit because I think it was turning some people off and it was happening a bit way too much. And, there's enough guys in the league. You're Josh Smith, you're Dwight Howards, you're DeAndre Jordans, you're Andre Drummond. There's enough of these guys that you couldn't escape it on a night-to-night basis. Like maybe it wouldn't happen in every game, but chances are if there's a handful of games going on that night, at least one of you are getting suckered into having to watch this.
Mm-hmm. I always love getting my rest during free throws, just like my that's just that pause. Justin, I'll give you a quote.
You guys aren't conditioned enough.
Give me a break.
You guys need to work out more.
Phil said that he could still blow by me, but Mark Cuban has said rewarding incompetence is never a good business strategy. Justin, what do you think there?
I think, why did he give Harrison Barnes $94 million over 4 years? That's how he feels.
Main feature attraction.
Handcuffs.
If you don't want to record, or if you don't want to reward incompetence, don't make him your go-to scorer, which he said that they view him as that in a couple of years. I don't think that these changes really change a lot. Mm-hmm. I think it's not even a half measure. Phil, you were talking about strategy in the fourth quarter. Well, fourth quarter doesn't really change because you couldn't do it in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter now. I think just because you can't do it in the last 2 minutes of each quarter, I guess what they're hoping to do is I guess you hope that you're not in the bonus prior to that point, because that's when the HackAShaq starts to get into play. They'll just do it the other 10 minutes of every quarter. Especially if they're in the bonus. It's a strategy that works. Personally, I kind of side with Cuban to an extent, where I think players just need to expecting them to improve their shooting, free throw shooting, isn't always fair, because it is difficult, especially with players, larger hands, big men, stuff like that. But there is things that they can do that's a little embarrassing. Shooting underhand has been brought up a lot. I think a lot of players would benefit from doing that, even though it looks hilarious. But overall, if you're going to do a rule change, I don't think it's this. I don't think this gets a lot solved. So it's a half measure. It's just trying to push back the issue, but I don't think once the season starts that this is going to change a lot.
Yeah, and jumping on what Justin said, there's a nice piece on The Ringer where Claire Near said basically Hack A Shaq's going to continue. It's just going to be earlier in the quarter. It's not going to solve anything. Phil, one thing Adam Silver said over the last few years is that he gets a lot of emails from people around the globe, coaches mainly, who say you have to keep letting our big men shoot free throws. Otherwise, they're not going to shoot free throws at the grassroots level. They'll just completely – it'll become a vestige of a skill set. What do you think of it that way?
Well, look. While I did say I'm not a big fan of free throws, the realistic part is free throws are a part of the game. So you need to be able to develop every part of the game, being a ball handling, shooting, rebounding, whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you become so overly specialized that you don't think you need to do this, that changes the game. And let's not forget, some guys growing up play one position, then translate to another where free throws matter more, or vice versa. I mean, like Anthony Davis, as he was a guard and then turns into a power forward center, right? Like they're guys growing up like, you want to have these basic fundamentals so no matter where you land, you can make that happen. Now, I think I agree with what you just said. I think you shouldn't you shouldn't push people away from something that is needed in the day-to-day. Like if you can just do this still earlier in the quarter, it's kind of pointless. Like I almost think it's like part one of a strategy. Like he's maybe putting his toe in the water saying, can I make this change? And see how people go and maybe make more drastic changes, because to both your points, this is probably not enough to really push the needle to say that the HackAShaq won't happen. So why make a change in a rule book that's lasted so long for something that hasn't happened? In my mind, it's part one. It's testing the waters of something of a larger change to come. And I actually really do feel that there's more than one person looking at free throws being a needed part of the game. This is and this is just my crystal ball, way at a left field call, but I actually think that they're looking at it as something that stops the play, stops the fun, and it's a more entertaining brand without it.
Do you guys think it's a development thing? Because it's not fair to completely generalize, but when you look at North American big men, 7-footer, stuff like that, you typically see them struggle with the free throws more, where you get more well-rounded games from a lot of international players. They really do stress the skill development, and sometimes that comes to the detriment of inside post play, stuff like that. You get your Andrea Bargnanis, guys like that. But overall, they have a better, more well-rounded game. Do you think that's how it's indictment on how we develop players in North America? Is it AAU basketball? Like, what do you guys kind of think is the reason behind this? Because there does seem to be a discrepancy on the general skill sets when you look at North American players compared to international players.
Yeah, I've always said fundamentally, there's always seemed to be a trend that international guys have the basics down better, the concrete, just, nut and bolts of basketball. I would love to see statistics of Americans versus foreigners in terms of free throw percentage lifetimes. Yeah. I would love to see that. And, God bless guys like Rick Barry. I mean, there's guys, Americans, who are amazing from the free throw stripe. You got to remember that too. But in terms of big men, I mean, Wilt Chamberlain, forever problems. Even Tim Duncan, problems at the free throw stripe.
Yeah, Tim Duncan got intentionally hacked a lot when he was younger.
Yeah. Well, just to piggyback on that, I actually think it could be how the game is sold in each environment. True. Like, I think basketball in Europe and across the pond is sold as a sport, whereas all the intricacies of the sport are important. I think there's this kind of pop culture hype thing in the United States where, all ESPN highlight reels, like all the glorified plays are what people look up to, right? The dunks, the posters, the blocks, the this, like,
the individual players, it's very brand driven.
Yeah, exactly. There's way more isolations. There's, like free throws and passes rarely make highlight reels. I mean, sure, you get your Ben Simmons and your Ricky Rubios and some beautiful pass, but not as much as your big dunks, your big 3-point shots, as your individual isolation plays. And I think when you see that as a kid, you emulate those people who you want to be. And so if you're overseas and the people you want to be are well-rounded people who understand the game on a fundamental level, then you're going to strive for that. If you're in the United States and you're a big guy and you're looking up to Shaquille O'Neal, well, what real factor, apart from an understanding that was one of his Achilles heels that could have, gotten him, X more points a game, that you're not really pushed to learn that as much as really make sure that you're a big physical imposing person who dominates your position.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think fundamentally the game is sold differently to the kids in different markets.
It's weird. It's weird to me because think about it, guys. The term is free throws. This is extra stats, man. They're handing them to you. It's on the table. It's on the table.
Another reason why I think they shouldn't exist.